Taeho Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the large footprint in the mud. The three-toed print was fresh. Whatever made it had passed by less than an hour ago. He took out his camera and snapped several photos, then used his finger to measure the depth. "Another razorback," he said into his recorder. "Adult male moving north toward the river." The hot sun of Nova Terra beat down on his back. Taeho had been on this planet for 2 years now. After 10 years in Korean Special Forces, he had traded his rifle for a camera and tracking equipment. Now he worked as a wildlife expert for the human colony. Nova Terra was humanity's first planet outside their home solar system. The blue-green world circled a yellow star much like Earth's sun. Humans had built their first settlement here just 3 years ago. The planet already had intelligent life, the Na'vi people. They had welcomed humans with caution, but also with hope for friendship. Taeho stood up and looked around the dense forest. Tall trees with purple leaves stretched up toward the sky. Small flying creatures darted between branches. In many ways, this world felt like Earth. But the dangers here were not like anything back home. His radio crackled. "Taeho, do you copy? This is base." He pressed the talk button. "Taeho here. What's up?" "The Na'vi delegation has arrived early. Director Yoon wants you back at base right away." Taeho frowned. "I'm tracking a razorback pack. They're moving closer to the east boundary. This isn't a good time for visitors. Tell that to the director. The shuttle landed 20 minutes ago. There are Na'vi families with children this time." Taeho's stomach tightened. "Children? During migration season? Who approved this?" "Above. My pay grade," the voice replied. "Just get back here." "On my way." Taeho packed his gear quickly. The razorbacks were the most dangerous predators on Nova Terra. 6 legs, armor-plated bodies, and jaws that could crush stone. Humans had learned to respect these creatures the hard way. 3 colonists had died during the first year before. They understood the danger. An hour later, Taeho drove his rover through the gates of Nova Colony. The settlement was small but growing. 2,000 humans now lived inside the protective walls. The buildings were simple, mostly prefab units shipped from Earth. But already people had planted gardens and built extensions. They were making this alien world their home. At the main landing pad, Taeho saw the sleek silver shuttle of the Na'vi visitors. The aliens stood in a small group, talking with Director Yoon and other colony officials. The Na'vi were beautiful beings, tall and slender with light blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Their large eyes, with pupils like black diamonds, could see spectrums of light humans could not. They moved with a grace that made even the most athletic humans look clumsy. Taeho parked his rover and walked toward the group. He could pick out Ambassador Dongwoo right away. The Na'vi official wore elaborate robes with symbols of his high rank. Beside him stood several other adult Na'vi, and to Taeho's concern, 3 small figures, clearly children. Director Yoon waved Taeho over. "Ah, here's our wildlife expert now. Taeho Kim knows more about Nova Terra's creatures than anyone else in the colony." Ambassador Dongwoo turned to face Taeho. The Na'vi's face showed subtle expressions that humans were still learning to read, but Taeho recognized respect in the slight bow. "We are pleased to meet you, Taeho Kim," the ambassador said. His translator device converted his musical language to English. "Your work helps our peoples understand this shared world better." Taeho bowed in return. "The honor is mine, Ambassador. I've learned much from Na'vi knowledge of this planet." One of the small Na'vi children stepped forward, looking up at Taeho, with wide, curious eyes. Unlike adult Na'vi who kept their emotions controlled, the child's face showed open wonder. "This is my son, Yoon," Ambassador Dongwoo said. "He has many questions about Earth creatures and wants to learn about Nova Terra's animals as well." The boy spoke in his native language, and the translator converted his high, sweet voice. "Is it true that you fought a razorback with just a knife?" Taeho smiled, crouching down to the boy's level. "Not exactly. I scared one away with noise and light. Fighting would be a bad idea. Razorbacks are much stronger than humans." "But you are not afraid?" Yoon asked. "I respect them," Taeho answered. carefully. In my culture, respecting something dangerous is smarter than fearing it or being too brave. Director Yoon cleared her throat. Taiho, the ambassador's family, and the other delegates will be staying for one full moon cycle. I'd like you to organize an expedition to show them some of the natural wonders nearby. Taiho stood up, concern crossing his face. Director, with all respect, this is the beginning of razorback migration season. The western herds are moving east, crossing right through our normal expedition routes. Surely we can find a safe path, Director Yoon said, with a tight smile that told Taiho this was not a request. The improved relations with the Na'vi are crucial for our colony's future. Ambassador Dongwu tilted his head. We do not wish to cause danger, Director. Perhaps another time would be better? Nonsense, Director Yoon said quickly. Taiho is simply being extra cautious, which we appreciate. But he'll ensure everything is completely safe. Taiho wanted to argue further but knew it would do no good. Politics always won over safety concerns. He'd seen it in the military, and now he saw it here on a new world. I'll plan something for 2 days from now, he said. A short trip to the crystal formations in the Eastern Valley. They're beautiful and should be away from the main migration paths. Young Yoon's eyes lit up at this, and he spoke rapidly to his father. The ambassador smiled. My son is very excited. He studies Earth geology and finds your planet's mineral formations fascinating. The comparison with our world's crystals would be most educational. Later that evening, Taiho sat in the colony's canteen with his friend Jiwoo Park. Jiwoo worked on the security team and would be joining the expedition. I don't like this, Taiho said, pushing his food around his plate. The Razorbacks are more active this season than last year. Yesterday I found tracks just 3 kilometers from the East Gate. Jiwoo took a drink from her cup. Could we take the northern route instead? Taiho shook his head. Scout drones spotted a pack of 12 adults moving through there this morning. 12? Jiwoo whistled. That's the largest group I've heard of. They're changing, Taiho said quietly. Adapting. The first year they hunted alone. Now they work in groups, set traps. They're learning. Like earth wolves? Smarter. Taiho pushed his plate away. We'll take 2 rovers with full security. Sonic shields, pulse rifles, the works. The director wants a nature hike, but I'm preparing for war. That night, Taiho couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the Na'vi boy, Yoon. The child reminded him of his own son back on Earth, so curious and fearless. Taiho hadn't seen his family in 3 years. The colony contract paid well, enough to put his son through university, but the separation was hard. He got up and checked the weather report for the expedition day. Clear skies predicted, good visibility. That was something at least. He pulled up maps of the Eastern Valley and began marking alternate escape routes. One thing his military training had taught him, always have a backup plan, and then have a backup for your backup. Taiho hoped he was being too cautious. Maybe the Razorbacks would stay away from the expedition path. Maybe everything would go perfectly. But 20 years of military and wilderness experience told him otherwise. Something about this trip felt wrong. Very wrong. On his desk sat a carved wooden figure, a Korean tiger his son had made for him before he left Earth. Taiho picked it up, running his thumb over the smooth surface. Watch over us, he whispered to the tiger spirit. We're going to need all the protection we can get. Morning came with 2 suns rising over the mountains of Nova Terra. The sky turned a deep orange as Taiho checked the expedition rovers one last time. He had packed extra weapons, medical supplies, and emergency beacons, more than what was standard for a simple sightseeing trip. Planning for a war? Jiwoo asked as she walked up to him. She wore the gray and blue uniform of the colony security team, a pulse rifle strapped to her back. Better safe than sorry, Taiho said. He pointed to a map spread on the rover's hood. I've changed our route. We'll stay closer to these ridges. If there's trouble, the high ground gives us better options. Jiwoo nodded. I've got 4 security officers coming with us, all ex-military. Good. Taiho folded the map. The director thinks this is just a friendly tour, but I want people who can handle themselves if things go bad. At the colony's main gate, the Na'vi delegation was already waiting. Ambassador Dongwu stood tall in simple travel clothes, very different from his formal robes. Next to him, young Yun bounced with excitement, pointing at the rovers and talking rapidly to his father. 2 other Na'vi adults stood nearby with their children. All the aliens wore special suits that kept their sensitive skin protected from Nova Terra's stronger sunlight. Director Yun was there too, smiling widely for the cameras that recorded this historic joint expedition. "This will be wonderful for public relations," she told Taiho quietly. "The first human Na'vi exploration team. Make sure everyone has a good time." Taiho kept his face neutral. "Safety is my first priority, Director." Of course," she said, waving her hand. "But these are important guests." The loading went smoothly. Taiho took the first rover with Ambassador Dongwu Yun and 2 security officers. Jiwoo drove the second rover with the other Na'vi visitors and the remaining security team. As they passed through the colony gates, Taiho felt the familiar tension in his shoulders, the feeling he used to get on patrol in conflict zones back on Earth. Out here, beyond the walls, the rules changed. Nature ruled, not humans. "How far to the crystal formations?" Ambassador Dongwu asked. "About 2 hours." Taiho replied, keeping his eyes on the path ahead. "We'll follow this valley, then cross the shallow river to reach the eastern highlands." Young Yun leaned forward in his seat, eyes wide as he watched the landscape pass by. The translator on his suit converted his words. "What animals will we see today?" Taiho smiled at the boy's enthusiasm. "If we're lucky, maybe some tree gliders or bubble frogs. The crystal areas have special creatures that feed on the mineral dust." "And the razorbacks?" Yun asked. "Will we see them too?" Taiho exchanged a glance with the ambassador. "Hopefully not. They usually avoid the highlands. The crystal formations hurt their feet." The first hour of the journey passed without incident. They saw herds of 6-legged grazers that looked like blue deer with extra limbs. Flocks of winged creatures soared overhead, their calls echoing across the valley. Taiho kept in constant radio contact with Jiwoo in the second rover. "Any sign of large predator tracks?" he asked during their third check-in. "Nothing yet," she replied. "But I noticed the tree gliders are staying high today. Might mean something's got them nervous." That wasn't good news. The small flying creatures usually came down to lower branches unless they sensed danger. Taiho slowed the rover and studied the landscape more carefully. The path narrowed as they entered a forest of tall purple trees. The canopy blocked much of the sunlight, creating a cool, shadowy tunnel. Ambassador Dongwu explained to his son how the trees communicated through an underground root network, sharing water and nutrients. Taiho only half listened. Something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet. They reached a small clearing where Taiho had planned their first rest stop. The rovers pulled up side by side and everyone got out to stretch their legs. The security team spread out in a loose circle around the group, eyes scanning the forest edge. "We'll take 15 minutes here," Taiho announced. "Please stay in the clearing. Don't go into the trees alone." The Na'vi children marveled at the strange plants and small creatures in the clearing, unknelt by a patch of color-changing flowers, watching as they shifted from blue to purple when he moved his hand over them. Taiho walked the perimeter of the clearing, checking for tracks or signs of large animals. He found nothing obvious, but the hair on the back of his neck still stood up. Years in dangerous situations had taught him to trust this feeling. He moved back to Ambassador Dongwu. "I think we should continue soon," he said quietly. "Something doesn't feel right here." The ambassador tilted his head, a gesture Taiho had learned meant curiosity. "Our people also develop such instincts. Do you sense specific danger?" "Not exactly. But the forest is too quiet. The small animals are hiding." Before the ambassador could respond, Jiwoo called from the far side of the clearing. "Taiho, you need to see this." Taiho jogged over to where Jiwoo stood at the forest edge. She pointed to a tree trunk. Deep gouges marked the bark about 2 meters up. "Razorback claw marks," Taiho said, his voice low. "Fresh ones." "Territory markings?" Jiwoo asked. Taiho nodded grimly. They're claiming this area, which means they're hunting here too. He turned back toward the rovers. We need to leave. Now, Hita raised his voice to address everyone. We're cutting the break short. Everyone back to the rovers, please. The security team began herding people back toward the vehicles. Taiho scanned the clearing and felt his heart jump into his throat. Where's Yoon? He asked the ambassador. Dongwu looked around, alarm spreading across his face. He was studying the flowers just moments ago. Taiho's training kicked in immediately. Jiwoo, get everyone into the rovers. Start the engines, but wait for my signal. He turned to the ambassador. When did you last see him? By those changing flowers. Dongwu pointed to the patch of blue-purple plants near the clearing's edge. Taiho jogged over and knelt by the flowers. Small footprints led from the spot toward the trees. He followed them with his eyes and spotted something blue just beyond the first line of trunks, a small figure bending down to examine something on the ground. Taiho called, keeping his voice calm but firm. Come back to the clearing, please. The boy looked up and waved. I found crystal pieces. His translator converted the excited words. Small ones in the dirt. Bring them with you, Taiho said, walking slowly toward the boy. We need to go now. Yoon nodded and began gathering the tiny crystal shards. Taiho was just 3 meters away when he heard it. A low, rumbling growl from deeper in the forest. Everything happened very fast after that. A massive shape burst through the underbrush behind Yoon, a full-grown razorback. 6 powerful legs propelled. Its armor-plated body forward. Its wedge-shaped head held rows of teeth that could crush bone. Run! Taiho shouted. He reached for his pulse rifle but knew he wouldn't be fast enough. Yoon turned and saw the charging predator. But instead of running, the boy froze completely still. It was the Na'vi instinctive response to danger. On their homeworld, their predators had poor vision and hunted by movement. But here, against a razorback, it was the worst possible reaction. The security team was shouting. Ambassador Dongwu screamed his son's name. The razorback closed the distance in seconds. Taiho pulled his rifle up but couldn't risk a shot with Yoon in the way. Instead, he did the only thing he could. He ran toward the boy. The razorback reached Yoon first. Its massive jaws opened wide, then closed around the lower half of the boy's body. But strangely, the creature didn't immediately bite down with full force. It seemed to be holding the boy, as if saving him for later. Scientists had observed this behavior before. Razorbacks sometimes captured prey alive, holding them until they could bring them back to their young. It gave Taiho one slim chance. He dropped his rifle and pulled the large hunting knife from his belt. Without slowing down, he launched himself at the predator, aiming for the soft spot behind its armored headplate. The razorback sensed him coming and swung its massive head, Yoon still caught in its jaws. The movement knocked Taiho sideways, sending him crashing into a tree trunk. Pain exploded across his ribs, but he pushed himself up again. The predator began backing away, dragging the Na'vi boy deeper into the forest. Yoon made no sound, his body limp with shock and fear. No, you don't, Taiho growled. He pulled a sonic grenade from his vest, a non-lethal device designed to confuse and disorient animals. With a quick twist, he activated it and threw it directly at the razorback's feet. The device exploded in a wave of painful sound. The razorback roared, its grip on Yoon loosening just enough. Taiho saw his chance and charged again, knife ready. This time he wouldn't miss. Time seemed to slow down for Taiho. The sonic grenade had stunned the razorback, but these creatures recovered quickly. He had seconds, not minutes. The predator shook its massive head, trying to clear the effects of the sonic blast. Its jaws were still wrapped around Yoon's lower body, but it hadn't bitten down hard yet. The boy hung limply, his blue skin looking pale with shock. Taiho ran forward, knife in one hand, shock baton in the other. The shock baton was his best weapon against a razorback. Their armor plates conducted electricity straight to their nervous system. Hold on, Yoon, he shouted, though he wasn't sure if the boy could hear him. From the clearing behind him, Taiho heard the security team shouting. Ambassador Dongwu was screaming his son's name, but Taiho blocked it all out. In combat, focus was everything. The razorback saw him coming. Its yellow eyes locked onto Taiho, intelligence showing in its gaze. This wasn't just an animal acting on instinct. It was thinking, planning. 10 meters away, Tahoe activated the shock baton. Blue electricity crackled along its length. 8 meters. The razorback turned to face him fully, Yoon still caught in its jaws. 6 meters. The creature made a decision. It began to bite down harder on the boy. 4 meters. Tahoe threw the knife. The blade spun through the air and struck perfectly between two armor plates near the predator's eye. It wasn't a killing blow, but it hurt enough to make the razorback loosen its grip on Yoon just slightly. Tahoe covered. The last distance in a leap. He jammed the shock baton into the soft spot under the creature's jaw, one of the few places not covered by armor. Electricity surged through the razorback's body. It roared in pain, its jaws opening just enough. Tahoe reached in and pulled Yoon free, falling backward with the boy in his arms. But the razorback wasn't finished. These creatures could take more punishment than almost any animal on Earth. It shook off the shock and charged at them, 6 powerful legs moving in perfect coordination. Tahoe had no time to get up. He rolled to the side, still holding Yoon tightly, against his chest. Sharp claws tore through his jacket sleeve, cutting into his arm. Hot pain flashed up to his shoulder, but he kept rolling until they were behind a fallen tree. "Yoon, can you hear me?" Tahoe asked, quickly checking the boy for injuries. The Na'vi child's large eyes blinked slowly. His translator device had been damaged, but he nodded weakly. The razorback circled around the fallen tree, looking for a way to reach them. It moved with purpose, testing different approaches. Most predators would have given up after being hurt, looking for easier prey instead. But razorbacks were different. They remembered those who hurt them. They held grudges. Tahoe reached for his radio but found it crushed from his fall. Without it, he couldn't call for help from the security team. He looked back toward the clearing, but thick trees blocked his view. He could hear shouting, but they were too far away to reach quickly. He was alone, injured, with a hurt child, and facing one of the most dangerous predators on Nova Terra. The razorback suddenly stopped its pacing. It raised its head and made a sound Tahoe had never heard before, a series of clicking barks that echoed through the forest. "No," Tahoe whispered. "No, no, no." Answering calls came from the forest. The razorback wasn't alone. It was calling its pack. Tahoe knew he had minutes, at most, before more razorbacks arrived. He checked Yoon again. The boy's environmental suit was torn where the predator's teeth had gripped him. Blue fluid, Na'vi blood, seeped from puncture wounds on his legs. "I need to move you," Tahoe told him, miming lifting and carrying. "It will hurt, but we have to go." Yoon nodded again, his face tight with pain. Tahoe lifted the boy as gently as he could and looked around for options. Going back to the clearing was the obvious choice, but the razorback blocked that path. Going deeper into the forest was risky with more predators coming. Then he spotted it. About 20 meters away, a formation of crystal spires jutted from the ground. The crystals grew close together, creating a natural fortress with gaps too small for a razorback to enter. "Hold tight," he told Yoon. Then he ran. The razorback reacted instantly, leaping over the fallen tree and charging after them. Despite its size, it moved with incredible speed. Tahoe could hear its heavy breathing getting closer with each second. 15 meters to the crystals. 10 meters. 5. The razorback was right behind them now. Tahoe could feel its hot breath on his back. With a final burst of speed, he dived forward, twisting his body to protect Yoon as they slid between two crystal spires. Sharp edges cut into Tahoe's back as they squeezed through the narrow gap. The razorback slammed into the crystals behind them, roaring in frustration. Its massive head pushed against the opening, but couldn't fit through. Tahoe pulled himself and Yoon deeper into the crystal formation. The spaces between spires formed, a small cave-like area, just big enough for them to sit. Outside, the razorback circled the crystal formation, testing for weaknesses. Its claws scraped against the hard surfaces, making a sound like nails on metal. "We're safe for now," Tahoe told Yoon, trying to sound confident. He wasn't sure if the boy understood his words, but tone and facial expressions crossed species barriers. He examined Yoon's injuries more carefully. The puncture wounds weren't as deep as he'd feared. Na'vi bodies were different from humans. Their vital organs were more protected, spread throughout their bodies rather than concentrated in one area. It might have saved the boy's life. Tai-ho pulled a small medical kit from his belt pouch, the one piece of equipment that hadn't been lost in the fight. He took out antiseptic wipes and bandages. "This might sting," he said, showing Yoon the wipes before using them. The boy winced as Tai-ho cleaned the wounds but made no sound. He watched Tai-ho work with those large, intelligent eyes. As Tai-ho wrapped bandages around the worst punctures, he kept glancing outside. The razorback still circled their crystal shelter, but it seemed to be waiting now rather than trying to get in, waiting for its pack. From the direction of the clearing, Tai-ho heard pulse rifle shots. The security team was fighting. He hoped Jiwoo had gotten the ambassador and others safely to the rovers. Yoon suddenly spoke. Without his translator, Tai-ho couldn't understand the words. But the boy pointed to himself, then made a swimming motion with his hands. "You can swim?" Tai-ho asked, mimicking the motion. Yoon nodded, then pointed outside to where the razorback watched them. He made a different motion, like something sinking underwater. Tai-ho understood. Razorbacks can't swim well. Their armor makes them sink. He nodded. "Good thinking, but there's no water nearby." The boy frowned, clearly frustrated by the language barrier. He touched his leg where the predator had bit him, then pointed to Tai-ho's arm where claws had cut him. He made a face of pain, then pointed outside again and shook his head. "You're saying it's hurt too?" Tai-ho guessed. "Yes, I hit it pretty hard." Suddenly the razorback's head snapped up. It looked away from them, into the forest. More clicking barks came from the distance, much closer now. "We don't have much time," Tai-ho said, more to himself than to Yoon. He checked his remaining equipment. The shock baton was still working, but its charge was low after the direct hit on the razorback. His knife was still stuck in the predator's. The medical kit had a pair of scissors, not much of a weapon. His water bottle, some ration bars, and a small flashlight completed the inventory. Not enough to fight off a pack of razorbacks. He looked up at the crystal spires around them. They reached about 4 meters high, too smooth to climb. The formation made a rough circle about 10 meters across, with gaps between crystals that were just wide enough for a human to squeeze through, but too narrow for the larger predators. Plan began to form in Tai-ho's mind. It was risky, maybe even stupid, but they were running out of options. Outside, the razorback suddenly backed away from the crystal formation. 2 more massive shapes emerged from the forest. More razorbacks, even larger than the first. The 3 predators circled the crystal formation, communicating with more of those clicking barks. They were coordinating, working together. Yoon tugged on Tai-ho's sleeve. The boy's face showed fear but also determination. He pointed to himself, then made a running motion with his fingers, then pointed in different directions. "You want to be a distraction?" Tai-ho asked, surprised. "No, too dangerous." But Yoon kept making the same gestures, more insistently. He pointed to Tai-ho's shock baton, then to the predators, then made a hitting motion. Despite the language barrier, Tai-ho understood the boy's plan. It wasn't bad, but it put Yoon at too much risk. Tai-ho shook his head and instead outlined his own plan through gestures. He would be the distraction. Yoon would run back toward the clearing when the razorbacks chased Tai-ho. The boy didn't like this plan. He crossed his arms and shook his head firmly. They were still arguing through gestures when a new sound cut through the air, the roar of rover engines coming closer. Help was coming. But would it arrive in time? The sound of rover engines grew louder, but so did the angry growls of the razorbacks. The 3 massive predators circled the crystal formation, searching for a way to reach Tai-ho and Yoon. "Help is coming," Tai-ho told Yoon, pointing toward the sound of engines. "We just need to hold on." The largest razorback, the one that had first attacked Yoon, still had Tai-ho's knife stuck near its eye. It paced back and forth, more angry than the others. The knife hadn't gone deep enough to kill, just enough to enrage. Suddenly, the predator rammed the crystal formation. The impact shook the ground beneath them. Thin cracks appeared in one of the crystal spires. "That's not good," Taiho muttered. The other Razorbacks joined in, throwing their armored bodies against the crystals. Each hit made the cracks grow longer. Their shelter wouldn't last much longer. Taiho made his decision. He pulled Yun closer and pointed to a small gap between crystals on the opposite side from where the Razorbacks were attacking. "When I say run, go that way," he said, knowing the boy wouldn't understand his words but hoping he'd follow the gesture. "Run straight to the rovers." Yun looked where Taiho pointed, then back at the human with worried eyes. He shook his head and grabbed Taiho's sleeve, not wanting to leave him. "You have to," Taiho insisted. He took the shock baton and held it up. "I'll keep them busy." Another powerful hit from the Razorbacks broke off a piece of crystal. A gap big enough for the predators to reach through had opened up. They were out of time. Taiho charged the shock baton to full power, using up its remaining energy. The blue electricity crackled along its length. "Now," he shouted, pushing Un toward the escape route. The boy hesitated for just a moment, then squeezed through the gap. Taiho saw him emerge on the other side and start running toward the sound of the rovers. The Razorbacks noticed immediately. Two of them broke off from attacking the crystal and charged after Yun. "Hey!" Taiho yelled, waving his arms. "Over here!" He ran out through another gap in the crystals, deliberately moving away from Yun's path. The lead Razorback, the one with the knife still in its face, spotted him and roared. It remembered him. Taiho ran as fast as he could through the forest. His injured arm throbbed with each step, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind him, he could hear the heavy footsteps of the Razorback crashing through underbrush. He glanced back once. The massive predator was gaining on him quickly. Its 6 legs gave it more speed than any human could match. Taiho knew he couldn't outrun it. Instead, he suddenly changed direction, diving behind a large tree. The Razorback tried to follow, but its momentum carried it past. It skidded around in a tight turn, claws digging into soil. Taiho used those few seconds to climb the tree. The rough bark cut into his hands, but he pulled himself up to the lowest branch, about 3 meters off the ground. The Razorback charged the tree, slamming into the trunk. The whole tree shook, nearly knocking Taiho off his perch. He held tight as the predator circled below, looking up at him with those intelligent yellow eyes. To Taiho's horror, the creature began to climb. Its claws dug into the bark as it pulled, its heavy body upward. Razorbacks didn't usually climb trees, their armored bodies were too heavy. But this one was determined. Taiho climbed higher. The branches grew thinner, bending under his weight. The Razorback followed, slower but relentless. Then, Taiho heard what he'd been waiting for, the sound of rovers very close now. Through the trees, he caught glimpses of the vehicles moving fast toward him, but they might not reach him in time. The Razorback was just 2 meters below him now, and Taiho had run out of tree to climb. The branches above him were too thin to hold his weight. The creature seemed to sense his predicament. It moved more carefully now, as if knowing its prey had nowhere to go. Taiho looked at the shock baton in his hand. One good hit might drive the Razorback back, but he would need to. Get close, too close, he made his choice. As the predator reached for the branch he stood on, Taiho jumped, not away, but toward the Razorback. The creature wasn't expecting this. Its eyes widened in surprise as the human flew toward it. Taiho landed on the predator's armored back, nearly sliding off. He grabbed one of the bony plates to steady himself, then jammed the shock baton into the soft spot where the creature's neck met its head. He pressed the activation button and held it down. The shock baton delivered its entire remaining charge in one powerful burst. The Razorback screamed, a high, piercing sound that hurt Taiho's ears. Its body convulsed, muscles spasming from the electric shock. Then suddenly, it let go of the tree. They fell together, crashing through branches. Taiho held onto the creature's armor plates, using the Razorback's body to shield himself from the impact. They hit the ground hard. The predator's heavy body cushioned Taiho's fall, but still knocked the wind from his lungs. He rolled off, gasping, for air, his whole body aching. The Razorback lay still, Taiho wasn't sure if it was dead or just stunned. He didn't wait to find out. He staggered to his feet and began moving toward the sound of the rovers, each step sending pain through his battered body. He'd gone about 50 meters when he heard a welcome voice. "Taiho! Over here!" It was Jiwoo. She stood at the controls of a rover, a pulse rifle ready in her hands. Beside her was Ambassador Dongwoo, his face tight with worry. "Where's Yoon?" the ambassador asked as Taiho approached. Before Taiho could answer, they heard a child's cry. Through the trees came the small blue figure of Yoon, running as fast as his injured legs could carry him. Behind him, the two other Razorbacks were gaining ground quickly. "Get ready to fire," Taiho told Jiwoo, pushing past his pain to move toward Yoon. Jiwoo aimed her rifle but held back. "I don't have a clean shot, they're too close to the boy." Taiho ran toward Yoon. The boy saw him and changed direction, heading straight for Taiho instead of the rover. "No, go to the rover," Taiho shouted, but without a translator, Yoon didn't. Understand, they met in a small clearing. Taiho grabbed Yoon and pushed him behind his body, turning to face the oncoming Razorbacks. He had no weapons left, no plan, just his body as a shield between the predators and the child. The Razorbacks slowed as they entered the clearing, spreading out to circle their prey. They were hunting now, working together to cut off escape routes. Their yellow eyes fixed on Taiho and the boy, jaws opening to show rows of sharp teeth. Taiho backed up slowly, keeping Yoon behind him. "When I say go, run to your father," he said, knowing the boy wouldn't understand his words but hoping he'd understand his tone. The rover was about 30 meters away, too far to reach before the Razorbacks caught them. Taiho looked around desperately for anything he could use as a weapon. There was nothing. The larger Razorback charged first. Taiho pushed Yoon roughly aside and threw himself in the opposite direction. The predator had to choose which one to follow. It chose Taiho. "Run, Yoon," Taiho yelled, scrambling to his feet as the Razorback bore down on him. The second predator moved to block Yoon's path to the rover. The boy froze again, his Na'vi instincts taking over. Time seemed to slow down for Taiho. He saw the Razorbacks, jaws open wide as it leaped toward him. He saw the second predator turning toward Yoon. He saw the fear in the boy's eyes, and then he heard a sound that filled him with hope, the high-pitched whine of a pulse rifle charging to full power. A bolt of blue energy struck the ground between Yoon and the second Razorback. The blast threw up dirt and rocks, startling the predator. 3 more shots followed in quick succession, forming a line between the boy and the creature. From the rover, Jiwoo was giving Yoon an escape route. The boy understood. He ran along the line of smoking craters toward the rover. But Taiho still faced his own Razorback. The creature was too close for Jiwoo to risk a shot. As it leaped toward him, Taiho dropped to the ground and rolled under its jump. The predator landed hard, turning quickly to attack again. Taiho saw Yoon reach the rover. Ambassador Dongwoo pulled his son into his arms. They were safe. The Razorback charged again. Taiho stood his ground, too exhausted to run anymore. But just as the creature was about to reach him, a hail of pulse rifle fire struck it from the side. A second rover burst through the trees, carrying the rest of the security team. Their combined fire brought down the Razorback mid-leap. It crashed to the ground just meters from Taiho, its armored body smoking from multiple hits. The other Razorback, seeing its packmate fall, retreated back into the forest. It was over. Taiho fell to his knees, his strength finally giving out. In moments, Jiwoo was at his side, helping him up. "You crazy fool," she said, but her voice was full of respect. "You could have been killed." "The boy?" Taiho asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "He's safe, thanks to you." They helped Taiho to the rover where Ambassador Dongwoo waited with Yoon in his arms. The boy's blue skin was pale, but his eyes were alert. When he saw Taiho, he reached out a small hand. Taiho took it, feeling the alien child's fingers wrap around his own. No words were needed. The rovers raced back to Nova Colony at top speed. In the rear compartment, a medic tended to Taiho's injuries. His arm needed stitches where the Razorback's claws had cut him. His back was bruised from the fall. But he was alive. Across from him, Ambassador Dongwoo held his son Yoon. The boy's blue skin was slowly returning to its normal color as the shock wore off. A Na'vi medic dressed his leg wounds with special bandages that glowed faintly. "Thank you," Ambassador Dongwu said, his translator converting the musical Na'vi language. "You saved my son's life." Taiho nodded, too tired for words. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading, leaving him drained and sore. "Why?" the ambassador asked after a long moment. "Why did you risk your life for him?" Taiho looked at him, confused by the question. "He's a child. He was in danger. What else would I do?" "Many species would protect their own young," the ambassador said. "But few would risk death for the offspring of another species. That's just—" Taiho paused, searching for the right words. "That's just what humans do." The rovers passed through the colony gates an hour later. A medical team waited to rush Taiho and Yoon to the hospital. Director Yoon was there too, her face pale with worry. "Is everyone all right?" she asked as the medics helped Taiho onto a stretcher. "No thanks to your tour," Jiwoo said sharply. "Taiho warned you about the Razorbacks." The director looked away, shame on her face. "I know. I should have listened." In the hospital, doctors treated Taiho's injuries. They cleaned and stitched the claw marks on his arm. They wrapped his bruised ribs and gave him medicine for the pain. A neural scan showed no serious head injuries despite the fall from the tree. "You're lucky," the doctor told him. "It could have been much worse." "How's the boy?" Taiho asked. "The Na'vi child is recovering well. Their biology is different from ours but resilient in its own way. The bites missed his major organs." Taiho nodded, relieved. He closed his eyes, suddenly overwhelmed by tiredness. He slept for 14 hours straight. When he woke, sunlight streamed through the hospital window. His body ached, but his mind was clear. Sitting in a chair beside his bed was Jiwoo. "Welcome back," she said with a smile. "How do you feel?" "Like I wrestled with a razorback," he replied, his voice hoarse. "Funny, because that's exactly what you did." She handed him a cup of water. "You're all over the news feeds. Human hero saves Na'vi child." "The video from the security team's helmet cameras has gone viral back on Earth," Taiho groaned. "I don't want to be famous." "Too late. The Na'vi ambassador has been here 3 times to check on you. Even Director Yoon came by, though she looked like she wanted to hide under the bed when the ambassador glared at her." A knock at the door interrupted them. A nurse entered, followed by Ambassador Dongwu. Behind him was Yoon, walking slowly with a slight limp. "The doctors say you can have visitors now," the nurse said. "But not for too long." Ambassador Dongwu approached the bed. "How are you feeling, Taiho Kim?" "I've been better," Taiho admitted. "But I'll heal." "How is Yoon?" The boy stepped forward, looking at Taiho with those large eyes. He wore a new translator around his neck. "I am healing," Yoon said through the device. "Thanks to you." "The doctors say Yoon will recover completely," the ambassador added. "The physical wounds will heal within days. The memory of the attack may take longer to fade." Yoon stepped closer to the bed. "You saved me from the monster. You were not afraid," Taiho smiled gently. "I was very afraid. Being brave doesn't mean you feel no fear. It means you act anyway." The boy nodded thoughtfully. "My father says humans are strange. You are physically weaker than many species, yet you survived and spread across your world. Now you reach for the stars." "We're stubborn," Taiho said, "and we look out for each other. That's how we survived." "And you look out for us too," Yoon said, "even though we are not human." Taiho didn't know how to respond to that. It seemed so obvious to him. You help those who need help. You protect those who can't protect themselves. That was just human nature. Ambassador Dongwu placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "The Na'vi Council has been discussing the incident. They wish to offer you our highest honor, the Crystal Star. No non-Na'vi has ever received it before." "That's not necessary," Taiho said, uncomfortable with the attention. "It is necessary," the ambassador insisted. "Not just to honor your bravery, but to mark a new understanding between our peoples. He reached into a pouch and withdrew a small crystal, shaped like a star and glowing with inner light. He placed it carefully on the table beside Taeho's bed. This is not the formal award. That will come later, with proper ceremony. This is a personal gift from my family to you. Taeho looked at the beautiful crystal. Thank you, he said simply. The ambassador nodded, then looked at his son. Yoon has something he wishes to say as well. The boy stepped forward again. From his pocket, he withdrew something small and placed it in Taeho's hand. It was a tiny sculpture, carved from the same crystals they had been seeking on their expedition. Despite its small size, it clearly showed a human figure standing protectively beside a Na'vi child. I made this, Yoon said. My father helped me find the crystal. It is you and me. Taeho felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at the small sculpture. It was simple but beautiful, carved with remarkable skill. Thank you, he said again, closing his fingers gently around the gift. I will keep it always. 3 weeks later, Taeho stood before the colony's main hall. His arm was still in a sling, but he could walk without pain now. Beside him stood Director Yoon, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. Yes, I do, Taeho replied. The doors opened, revealing a room filled with humans and Na'vi. At the center stood Ambassador Dongwoo with Yoon and several other Na'vi officials. They all wore their formal robes, glittering with embedded crystals. Taeho walked forward. The room fell silent. Taeho Kim, Ambassador Dongwoo said, his voice carrying through the hall. The Na'vi people wish to honor your courage and compassion. Your actions remind us that true strength comes not from physical power, but from the heart. He lifted a large crystal star, similar to the small one he had given Taeho privately, but much larger and more elaborate. We present you with the crystal star, our highest honor. May its light remind all who see it that bonds can form between different worlds, different species when we recognize the value of all life. He placed the star in Taeho's good hand. The crystal felt warm, almost alive. As Taeho accepted it, the Na'vi in the room began a soft, musical hum. Their version of applause. Yoon stepped forward then, no longer limping. Will you tell us a story of Earth? He asked. My father says humans learn through stories. Taeho looked at the boy, then at the mixed crowd of humans and Na'vi. He thought of his own son back on Earth, who would be proud of him today. There is an old Korean folktale, he began, about a tiger and a persimmon. That evening, as the twin moons of Nova Terra rose over the colony, Taeho stood on the observation deck. The crystal star hung from a chain around his neck, glowing softly in the darkness. Jiwoo joined him, leaning on the railing. So, hero, she said with a small smile. What's next? Taeho looked out at the alien landscape that was becoming home. The Na'vi Council has asked me to help create a joint human Na'vi Ranger program. They want to learn how to better protect themselves from predators. And you said yes? I said I'd think about it. He touched the crystal sculpture from Yoon that he kept in his pocket. But I probably will. Someone needs to teach them. Teach them what? How to fight. Taeho shook his head. How to be brave. How to face fear. How to protect others. He looked up at the stars, some familiar from Earth, others new and strange. How to be human, I guess. Jiwoo laughed softly. That's a tall order. Maybe, Taeho said. But it's what we do best. Across the colony, in the Na'vi quarters, young Yoon stood at his own window. His wounds had healed completely, leaving only faint marks that glowed slightly in the dark. He looked at the human section of the colony, thinking about Taeho and the story he had told of Earth. The human had said something that stayed with Yoon. Being brave doesn't mean you feel no fear. It means you act anyway. Yoon decided then that he wanted to learn more about humans. Perhaps one day he would visit Earth. Perhaps one day he would be brave like Taeho. On his desk sat a small model of a razorback he had made from clay. But in His model, the creature, wasn't scary. It was lying defeated on the ground. Standing over it was a small blue figure and a taller pink one, side by side. Different species, different worlds, but standing together. That, Yoon thought, was the most important lesson the human had taught him. The end